There's a kind of silence that follows people who think too deeply. It's not the silence of shyness or social awkwardness. It's the silence of a mind that never truly stops moving. Have you ever seen someone sitting quietly in a crowded room, staring into space as if they're trying to listen to something no one else can hear? That's a deep thinker. They're not detached. They're just elsewhere, somewhere between thought and feeling, reality and meaning. For most people, life is about motion, doing, chasing, reacting. But for deep thinkers, life is about pausing, about looking between the lines of experience and asking, what does all this mean? And that question, though beautiful, is also their curse, because thinking deeply means you can never fully rest. The mind of a deep thinker is like an ocean in a storm, calm on the surface, but endless waves of thought move beneath. They feel everything a little too much. They notice the tone behind words, the tension in silence, the unspoken weight in someone's eyes. To others, it might look like overthinking, but for them, it's not overthinking. It's understanding. There's a loneliness that comes with that kind of awareness. When you see too much, it becomes harder to belong. You can't laugh mindlessly at small talk when your mind keeps whispering, why do we talk so much, yet say so little? You can't watch the world chase fame and distraction without feeling a quiet ache that says, there's something deeper we're missing. Most deep thinkers grow up feeling a little out of place. As children, they might have been the ones who asked too many questions, the kind that made adults uncomfortable. Why do people lie? Why do we have to go to school if nobody's really learning about life? Why do we hurt the people we love? The world doesn't always reward those questions. It teaches us to stop asking and just adjust. But deep thinkers can't. They carry that same childlike curiosity into adulthood, and it turns into introspection, a never-ending dialogue with themselves. That's why many deep thinkers often appear withdrawn or quiet. It's not because they don't care, it's because they care too much. They live more in their inner world than in the outer one. They analyze, imagine, reflect. Every word they speak has already been rehearsed 100 times in their head, weighed for truth and consequence. But the psychology of deep thinkers isn't just about intellectual depth, it's about emotional intensity, because true depth isn't found in what you know, but in what you feel. A deep thinker is often deeply empathetic. They absorb other people's pain without meaning to. When someone they love is hurting, they don't just witness it, they internalize it. They try to fix it, to understand it, to carry it for them. But that kind of empathy is heavy. It drains them. It's the reason they often need solitude, not because they hate people, but because they need space to breathe after feeling too much of the world. Psychologically, deep thinkers often have something in common, a heightened sensitivity to meaning. Their brains are wired to connect patterns, to see causes behind effects, emotions behind actions, and purpose behind chaos. That's why they often get lost in thoughts that seem too abstract for others. They're not thinking about what happened. They're thinking about why it happened and what it reveals about human nature. If someone betrays them, they don't just think, I was betrayed. They think, what does betrayal say about trust? About love? About human fear? Every experience becomes a philosophy, lesson. But there's a darker side to this constant reflection. Deep thinkers struggle with what psychologists call existential rumination, a kind of thinking that spirals endlessly around meaning, morality, and mortality. It's the reason they can go from a wonder to despair within minutes, because the same mind that can imagine beauty can also imagine loss. The same sensitivity that lets them feel joy deeply also makes them feel sadness with unbearable clarity. Late at night, when the world is quiet, their thoughts grow louder. They replay conversations, analyze choices, dissect emotions, and question reality itself. What if none of this really matters? What if all meaning is just an illusion we create to survive? And yet, by morning, they find hope again in the small things, the way sunlight falls on the floor, the way a stranger smiles without reason. It's almost poetic. The same mind that breaks them is also the one that saves them. There's also a strange paradox about deep thinkers. They crave understanding, but they rarely feel understood, because how do you explain the feeling of seeing life from 10 different angles at once? How do you describe the exhaustion of feeling every emotion, analyzing every thought, and still pretending to be normal? Most of them learn to hide it. They wear a calm face, speak softly, and keep their storms private. You'll rarely see a deep thinker argue to prove they're right. They already know truth isn't a contest. It's an exploration. They'd rather understand than win. And that's what makes them both powerful and vulnerable in relationships. They love differently. When a deep thinker loves, it's not casual, it's spiritual. They want to know you beyond your words, how your mind moves, what your silence hides, what dreams you've buried. They don't just fall in love with people, they fall in love with souls. But because of that, they also feel heartbreak on a level most can't imagine. They don't just lose someone, they lose the world they built inside their head with them. Yet despite all that pain, deep thinkers rarely become cynical. They might become quiet, cautious, skeptical, but deep down, they still believe in meaning. They still believe in connection, because if they didn't, they wouldn't think so deeply in the first place. Their search for truth, for purpose, for beauty, it's all an act of hope disguised as thought. In psychology, it's often said that people who think deeply tend to struggle with anxiety or melancholy. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe it's the cost of awareness. When you see life as it truly is, its fragility, its impermanence, its contradictions, how can you not feel both awe and sadness? Deep thinkers carry both emotions in their hearts simultaneously. They can see the tragedy and the miracle of existence in the same moment. That's why they're often drawn to art, philosophy, poetry, anything that tries to translate the unspoken complexity of being alive. For them, the purpose of life isn't success or status. It's understanding. Understanding why we suffer, why we love, why we continue, even when nothing makes sense. That search gives their life shape, even when it brings them pain. But here's the irony. Deep thinkers rarely find the answers they seek, because every answer opens another question. Every truth reveals another layer. And so, their journey never ends. It just evolves. They start by asking, who am I? Then they ask, what is reality? And eventually, they arrive at the most haunting question of all. Does anything truly matter? And yet, despite their doubts, they keep going. Because even if meaning is uncertain, the search for it still feels sacred. It's as if their soul knows something their mind can't explain. That thinking deeply, even if it hurts, is what makes them human. Maybe that's what separates a deep thinker from the rest of the world. While most people live to escape thought, they live to embrace it. They walk willingly into the darkness of confusion, knowing that somewhere in there lies the faintest light of truth. So if you're someone who feels too much, thinks too deeply, and often wonders why the world seems so loud and shallow, maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just tuned to a different frequency. Maybe your silence, your questions, your loneliness, they're not signs of weakness, but evidence of depth. Because in a world obsessed with noise, distraction, and speed, being a deep thinker is an act of quiet rebellion. It means you're not content with surfaces. You want to know the essence. You want to feel everything, even if it hurts. You want to live with meaning, even if the world doesn't understand you. And maybe that's the ultimate beauty of being a deep thinker. You suffer more, yes, but you also see more. You see the poetry in pain, the art in imperfection, the lesson in loss. You carry the universe in your mind, and though it's heavy, it's also holy. So the next time someone calls you too sensitive, too analytical, or says you think too much, smile quietly, because they have no idea how beautiful it is to feel the pulse of existence so vividly that even silence feels like it's speaking to you. And maybe that's what it means to be truly alive. Not to escape your thoughts, but to dive into them until you find yourself reflected in their depths. Tell me, when you close your eyes and think, what do you see? Do you see the world as it is, or as it could be?